Greetings, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for the operator meeting today. My name is Hannah Hickam, and I'll be your host. If you have questions during the presentations, please enter those into the chats. And we'll kick it off first with a reminder from the engineering team. I'm not sure who on the team is going to speak, so if you could just chat into me so that I can make you a host, I will allow you to unmute yourself. Oops. Oh, okay, just a minute, Diane. All right, Diane, you should be able to unmute.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yep, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, I don't have slides or anything, so I'm just gonna, quick reminder here. Good morning, my name is Diane McCoy. I'm an engineering supervisor. Quickly go over some expectations related to Rule 419 and brain head testing. Every well is required to have pressure monitoring checks monthly. The data needs to be recorded, saved, and available upon request. Each well is also required to have an annual brain head test. Annual tests should be completed within 9 to 15 months of the previous annual test. We are wanting to avoid situations where we have tests conducted in January 1 year and then December of the following year, leading to almost 2-year span between our integrity monitoring tests. So again, we're aiming for annual tests to be completed within that 9 to 15 month window after the previous annual test. Additionally, tests need to be submitted timely within 10 days of being submitted, within 10 days if they're going to be submitted on Form 17, and then no later than the 15th of the month following the month that the test was conducted in if they're being submitted via bulk upload. Brain head tests are a way to check on the well and monitor wellbore integrity. We want to ensure that we're being completed timely and in accordance with Rule 419. And there is guidance on our website. It's called Brain Head Monitoring, Testing, Mitigation, and Reporting Operator Guidance. That's all I have, just that quick reminder. Thanks for your time.
Great, thank you, Diane. Next up, we have the Form 27 Financial Assurance Information Requirements, and Greg is going to do that one. I will stop sharing so that you can share, Greg.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Let me see if I can share my screen. And I think it's that one there. How'd we do? Can we see that okay?
It says you started. Oh, yep, that's good.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. I'm Greg Duranlo. I'm the environmental manager. I'm going to talk about, I think most of you have noticed, or most of you that submit Form 27s have noticed that there's been a couple of changes to the form, and that maybe has caused some hiccups. So I'm going to walk through those changes and hopefully then be able to answer questions afterwards. So first I'm going to walk through some of the rules that came into place with financial assurance rulemaking that have affected the Form 27. So Rule 703 is financial assurance for other oil and gas facilities, and 703B is specific to remediation projects. The rule requires the director to review the adequacy of the operator's financial assurance relative to the scope of the remediation project and determine whether or not project-specific or additional financial assurance would be necessary. The rule creates the expectation that if there's a disagreement over the financial assurance situation, that will not prevent or hinder continued site cleanup. The Form 27 will be approved with the condition, and then the operator can proceed with the work, and the financial assurance question can basically be answered in a financial assurance hearing. The rule also sets the standards for which the amount of financial assurance is compared. And so it says it's necessary to ensure the proper remediation, reclamation, closure, and abandonment of the remediation project site. So the financial assurance that's held by the operator must cover all of those activities. I did want to point out that there is a cross-reference typo that remained as the rules got finalized. There was some changing around of sections. And so 703B3, when talking about the release of financial assurance, refers to Rule 913H, and that rule should actually be 913I, and I'll show that in a slide in a minute. But next, I want to talk about general liability insurance, also required, and also required to cover incidents, accidental pollution, sudden and accidental pollution that requires remediation. So 705B describes the requirement for $5 million of general liability insurance that includes coverage for remediation projects. And then 705F requires the director to review the adequacy of the coverage. So between 703B and 705F, the director is required to review both the adequacy of the financial assurance and the liability or insurance coverage. Moving on to the 900 series, the requirements for the operator to provide this information, they're also redundantly covered there, if you will. So 912B6C requires that the operator provide information about their general liability insurance on the Form 19 or Form 27. And the Form 19 supplemental, well, I'll get into that in a minute. So 913I talks about when the financial assurance for a remediation project is released. And that's when the operator completes their cleanup in accordance with the approved work plan. Again, there's a cross-reference issue here. 913I should refer back to Rule 703B, not Rule 706. But for both of these rules, the Form 19 supplemental that's described in the rules would be actually a supplemental. It's the supplemental that's required to be submitted in 90 days. And that would be requesting closure and transferring the project to a remediation project, to a Form 27. So it didn't make sense to make a change to the Form 19 to describe financial assurance, even though these rules indicate that that might be the case, because at the time that Form 27 would be, or that Form 19 would be submitted, it will actually be information required on a Form 27. Hopefully that's clear, but we only made these changes that I'll describe next on the Form 27. So looking at the changes we made to the form, here is a Form 27. If you go to the remediation progress update tab and scroll down, this is where we added the fields for the adequacy of the operator's general liability insurance and financial assurance. So what we've got here is a large text box for the operator to provide a description of the adequacy of their general liability insurance and financial assurance to fully address the anticipated costs of the remediation, including the estimated remaining costs for this project. We also provided a single cell for the estimated outstanding project costs. So that can just be numerically submitted. So we also provide a instruction: if this information has been provided on a Form 27 within the last 12 months, you can provide the document number of that form. So the rules require that information is provided at least annually, or every 12 months. So, you don't need to copy and paste it from the previous form. You can just reference the prior form that it was submitted upon. So I want to go through the timing and the rollout, how we are pushing this out and requiring the information. So obviously we didn't get the Form 27 updated in time for the April 30th effective date of the rules, but we did get the Form 27 updated and rolled out on June 6th, 2022. And at that time, we required this information on all forms that were in process. Problem being is there's a backlog of Form 27s, and many of those Form 27s were submitted prior to June 6th, and also many were submitted prior to April 30th. So on the ones prior to April 30th, obviously the rule didn't specifically apply. On the ones prior to June 6th, that just created an administrative challenge for us to collect the information. So we're working with our developers to update the form version so that we will require the information on Form 27s submitted after June 6th, 2022. So any form that was submitted after we had the data fields available, we will need to collect this information. And the other thing we're doing is any form that is reviewed by staff and returned to draft and then resubmitted after June 6th will require that information, regardless of when that form was originally submitted. And then we won't, though, return forms to draft just to collect this information. Like if the form was submitted in May and everything else is complete, we won't return the form to draft to collect this information. We will process the form as is. That said, COGCC environmental protection staff will evaluate this information on behalf of the director, and we will evaluate the information if we think there's a gap in coverage, even if it's one of those forms that doesn't have it explicitly. We will follow up with the operator and work through that process. So hopefully that's pretty clear. We're working on the business rules right now so that we can get a few forms that are kind of stuck in limbo moving forward. But in the meantime, if you have the information, if you've got a form that was submitted prior to June 6th and we've changed the form version on you, and now we're waiting on a fix to get that form in, you can reach out to the EPS who's reviewing that form and provide them with information relative to that request. We can enter that information and move the form along while we're waiting on a technical solution. I almost said next slide, but I'm controlling my own slideshow. So I want to talk about the information requirements and what it is that COGCC is looking for. And basically, the information provided should answer this question. Is the operator's financial assurance adequate, or is additional financial assurance and general liability insurance necessary and reasonable for this remediation project? So how do we do that? I'm going to go through COGCC's expectations for information necessary to make the case that the financial assurance is adequate. And then I'll go through 4 kind of made up examples just to show the depth of information that we're looking for. So the questions that I've got listed here should be answered in a brief statement on a Form 27. They could be in a paragraph, they could be in a bullet list that you copy and paste from a Word document. They could be in an attachment where your text box actually says see attached document number 12345, titled other, I think is the only thing would have to cover that. But the information provided should provide a complete overview of the financial assurance picture for the operator as it's related to the specific remediation project at issue. So the questions that we're looking for answers for are: how much project-specific financial assurance does the operator already have? Is this part of a larger project that includes financial assurance? And what form is that in? Is it a cash bond? Is it a surety? What is the form of financial assurance? How much and what type of general environmental or pollution liability insurance does the operator carry? Rule 705 requires $5 million, but does the operator carry more? Does their insurance include restrictions that would prevent it from paying out for this particular incident? And then how can it be used for the project if necessary? If it comes down to the operator doesn't have the ability to continue the work, how does the insurance actually cover the cost to clean up the project? Information about the project itself, and while this is sort of provided in the other areas of the Form 27, you know, a really brief summary here would be helpful to staff in our review. So how far along is the project? What work has been completed to date? Have you, you know, just started the project? Is this the initial project plan? Have you done full, you know, vertical and horizontal delineation of contaminants? Have you determined whether or not groundwater is impacted? Have you done any source removal? Have you started any in situ or ex situ cleanup? What work is remaining to be completed? You've done source removal, but now you know you have a groundwater plume to clean up. So you've got further delineation, monitoring, and maybe active remediation of groundwater. How long do you expect this project to go on? Is this a relatively quick soil dig and haul that the excavation can be opened up, confirmation samples collected, you know, and backfilled within a couple of weeks? Or is this a you know, project that's got some significant you know, time to clean up, where there's maybe challenging soil lithology or groundwater impacts that go off site, and there's landowner negotiations, et cetera. And then what's the operator's level of commitment to cleaning up the project? You know, is this the highest priority for the operator to get this done in a timely manner? Is this one of, you know, dozens of remediation sites that you know, the operator's got to balance? Those all affect the financial assurance picture of the operator. And then again, we do have the separate data field for the estimated anticipated cost to complete the project. So is there, you know, $10,000 worth of you know, sampling and then backfill and grading on an active site, or is there you know, $50,000 outstanding remaining, or $125,000 on a groundwater cleanup site? So we want to see a picture of that too. And that's, you know, obviously that is going to be just an estimate. Some obviously projects are hard to predict, especially in the earlier stages. So now I'll go through just a couple of examples that I put together to kind of I really mostly just give a flavor of the level of detail I think that we expect in these in the text field. So first example, the operator would say, you know, we don't have site-specific financial assurance. We do carry the $5 million environmental and pollution liability insurance, but we're not expecting to make a claim on this project. And then a description of where they are with the project. You know, it's 90% complete, investigation, delineation complete, no groundwater impacts, source removal is complete. We just need backfill, grading, interim reclamation for an operating well site. And that's going to take about 2 weeks to get done. And, you know, as far as the level of commitment to this site, the operators might say it's an active well site and production facilities will continue to produce for 20 or more years. You know, the operator's committed to being here. They're not trying to close up their asset base and you know, sunset their operations. And their estimated cost of completion is $20,000. So based on this picture, it doesn't look like you know, they appear. It looks like they appear to have adequate coverage. They're committed to the project, and no additional financial assurance would be required in a situation like this. Here's another example. Remediation project is part of a cleanup at a centralized E&P waste management facility that carries $750,000 financial assurance specifically for site-specific cleanup. Operator carries $10 million of environmental and pollution liability. However, they still don't anticipate a claim for the project here. The project is 25% complete. They've done investigation and delineation, and they're currently doing source removal. They need to complete the source removal, but they know there's groundwater impacts, and and they're low enough that they plan to monitor groundwater attenuation after the source is removed. They're going to continue the source removal this summer. Attenuation in groundwater may take a couple of years plus an additional year of monitoring. So they estimate the project cost to completion is $110,000. But they plan to operate this centralized DMP waste management facility for 15 years, and they're 100% committed to the cleanup during the operational life of the facility. So based on this information, this, again, no additional financial assurance would be required. This looks like they have adequate coverage, adequate commitment, and they've adequately described the scope. So here, an operator submits that they have no extra financial assurance for this project. Operator carries general liability insurance per 705. No details provided. The project is ongoing, they say, currently excavating and removing groundwater from the excavation. They're hauling off contaminated material. They haven't done delineation of soil or groundwater. Some of this they might state, and some of this we may be inferring from other information in an incomplete, if you will, filled out Form 27. Their plan is to keep digging, pump groundwater, determine treatment, natural attenuation, and they've put in $10,000 for their estimated cost to completion. Staff looks over the operator's assets. They find that they've got 22 active low producing wells. They've got 3 open spills. They've got 2 active remediation projects. In this case, the operator here has not provided sufficient detail for the COGCC to fully evaluate the coverage. They've likely underestimated the amount and cost of work remaining, and they have significant liability against their existing financial assurance. Whoops. Oh boy. Sorry about that. So, geez, based on staff review of this picture, staff would likely require additional financial assurance to ensure that this spill that we're dealing with here, this remediation project, will be properly cleaned up and closed. And then the last example that I've got, an operator just tells us that their financial assurance was provided earlier this year. They give a document number 8675309, and they submitted that on May 23rd, 2022, and there's been no changes since. They still provide the estimated cost to cleanup of $25,000. So with the rule requiring the information to be submitted annually, this is a satisfactory information provided. Staff will review the information that was provided earlier, make sure that there's been no significant changes, like did the scope of the remediation project change since the evaluation was last conducted. In other words, when they submitted that they had adequate financial assurance before, and they only knew about soil contamination, and since then they've found groundwater contamination, the scope and cost to complete would have increased substantially. So in that case, the previous evaluation might need to be looked at again. And so, that's what staff would take to the director if we chose to recommend additional financial assurance. So that's all I've got. Hopefully that's helpful to folks filling out these forms. And we will certainly, we're all on the learning curve with the information here. So hopefully that's helpful describing the level of detail we're looking for and kind of the specifics of the information that we're looking for in order to make that evaluation. And we'll get to your questions at the end of all the presentations. So thanks.
Thank you, Greg. And yes, please type your questions into the chat and we will get to those. Next up is Form 8 update, Chris Eisinger.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to quickly make some comments about the new electronic Form 8, which is the conservation levy payment. For the most part, the new form has, I think, gone well. and is making the whole process more efficient. We've had 2 technical glitches, one of which has been resolved, the other we're still working on. And the first one is that if anyone is receiving a payment receipt with the incorrect company name, please contact Terry Econoy, and she can get that sorted out for you, and we can create another receipt. It's happened in a few cases where the wrong company name has been printed on a payment receipt. The second technical glitch is a fairly unique. I'm only aware of one case of this happening, but if you are in a situation where there are multiple payers acting on behalf of a single operator, and you get an error about filing it, it could be because you're not the first payer filing for that particular quarter. And if that happens, you get that error, again, please contact Terry and she can help get you sorted out. The other 2 comments I'll make just for guidance is that if you should have an exception type of other as provided for on the Form 8, please provide a description of what that exception type is and don't just type in other. That's not particularly helpful for us as we review that those exceptions. And then finally, if you should have no sales for a particular quarter, that means you have no levy payment and no Form 8 will need to be submitted. So that was all I had, Hannah. Thanks very much.
Great, thank you, Chris. Next up is financial assurance hearings application template. Mimi.
Thank you, Hannah. So you're going to be hearing more about financial assurance from Jane Stanzik coming up here in just a moment, but I wanted to start off by letting everyone know that we have developed a template for the hearing application that operators will be able to use when seeking commission review of their proposed financial assurance plan. Hannah, am I able to share my screen?
You should be able to, yeah.
Super. Hopefully everyone can see my Word document. So if you're familiar with the template that was created for the oil and gas development plans, the template for the financial assurance plan really mirrors that. So we're seeking the bare minimum information necessary for a hearing application to be considered by the commission. We just walk through the required elements that are set forth in the 500 series. I will note that we are not requiring operators to include the lands that are at issue for the financial assurance plan. Long story short, if you had to include all the lands that would be at issue with your assets that you're seeking the financial assurance plan for, your application would likely be incredibly long. So we're not requiring that. But you'll see that we do require that the applicant obviously include their name, what option they're planning or proposing to be approved by the commission of their financial assurance plan. You'll have to identify the specific rule that you're filing your plan pursuant to. And at the very end, obviously you need to sign and give us your contact information. So again, this is a pretty basic template, not much there, but we will have this up on the hearings website a little bit later today. And we ask that operators do use this template when they are filing their financial assurance plan hearing request with the commission. So that is all I had.
Thank you, Mimi. Next up is financial assurance implementation and forms update. Jane Stanzik.
You're muted, Jane.
Sorry, I lost Zoom for a second there.
Sorry, I'm always muted. Sorry about that. Good morning, everybody. We'll try it again. Well, today is June 14th. And a month or so ago, we told you that the Form 3 would be released on June 15th. And it's not going to be released tomorrow because we're still working on it. Tomorrow, this delay in getting the Form 3 ready in a timely fashion for operators to meet, for certain operators to meet the July 1st deadline for filing their financial assurance plan is going to be brought up with the commission tomorrow. I haven't seen the agenda for tomorrow, but everyone needs to listen to the hearing tomorrow to learn what the commission, how the commission is going to address our delay in getting the Form 3 ready. So, you know, we've been working hard on it and just isn't happening. Beyond that, I don't really have any other updates about forms. We're still testing the Form 6A. Watch the website for an announcement when it is released. Hopefully it'll be within the next week. We certainly understand that operators want to file their Form 6A before they file their financial assurance plan, so that those out-of-service wells are designated as such and are reflected in their plan. So we're keeping the 6A is at the top priority for the developers and testers to get that released, so everyone will have access to it and can designate the wells they want to as out of service. Let's see. We're working on bugs that are popping up with the released revisions to the Form 2, and haven't been aware of the 2A or the 4 having an issue, but the Form 2 had an issue. So folks are working on that. And gosh, there was one other thing I was going to mention, but now it slipped my mind. So I see lots of being distracted by all these questions coming in, so I need to stop looking at those. So that's it. Put your questions in the chat and we'll answer them.
Thank you, Jane. And I'm going to share my screen again. I pulled up the agenda and it looks like staff update on 4.3 is going to be at 10:05 tomorrow. So everyone can tune in at that time.
Thank you, Hannah.
You're welcome. And all the information is right here on our homepage. That should be right there. And it's down here because Tuesday is still here, but Tuesday will be gone tomorrow and Wednesday will be at the top. Here's the agenda. And then there's the Zoom link. So let's get into some of these questions.
Oh, actually, there's one more thing to mention about the fact that the Form 3 isn't ready. So please don't circumvent our delay by filing some manner of your own financial assurance plan. Please don't send anything until we get the Form 3 published and ready. And please tune into the hearing tomorrow for more details on all of that. Sorry, thanks.
Thank you, Jane. All right, and I'll start with the questions. Let me just roll to the top here. The first question, Diane, is for you. I have read through all the 419 rules on brain and head testing. I am hoping to submit for a variance on the annual testing requirement. Do I have to do each well individually?
No, your variance request will be submitted as a hearing application on the e-filing system. If you need help getting that filed, you can contact staff ahead of time to walk through what needs to be included, including like the list of the wells, the APIs, or if it's all your wells or whatever the right information to have on that application is, reach out, but it's going to be a variance that'll go through the hearing application system.
Great, thank you, Diane. The next question is will the Form 27I be updated so that the financial assurance section is required to submit? This is a two-part question.
Yes. So currently the data fields are available on the Form 27I and Form 27S, I believe, because the example that I put in my presentation, I believe was from a Form 27 initial, even though it still has the remediation progress update. So if I'm wrong about that, let me know. I will say this, it's not really, I guess it's not intended that would be required for the first Form 27 submitted, because it's required to be submitted once in a 12-month period. So it's now, as soon as I said that, that's not the case. If it's a Form 19 that is converting to a Form 27, then yes, it will need to be provided on the Form 27. If it's a Form 27 for like a closure of a facility, then those costs would probably be unknown. And so it's not necessary to provide that at that time. We would look for it on a later Form 27. So it will be available on the initial or the supplemental, the data fields.
Thank you, Greg. And part two of that question is, if we have submitted the Form 27I prior to this clarification, but after June 6th without the info, will it be returned to draft?
I'm sorry. Yeah. So if it was submitted after June 6th, we are requiring that information. It can either be returned to draft for you to put it in, or you can send that information to the EPS and they can put it in and move the form along.
Thank you, Greg. This next one is also for you. What is expected on Form 27 FA for facility closures where no impacts have been identified? Do we capture sampling and reporting costs only?
That would be acceptable, yeah.
Great, thank you, Greg. Thanks, Sabrina, for putting Terry Eichnoy's email in here. The next question is, it may be helpful to clarify costs that need to be covered by remediation compared to costs during closure of a facility. For example, if a tank leaked and soil needed to be cleaned up, that cost would be covered under remediation, whereas if the tank was then closed/removed, the cost to remove the waste remaining in the tank and removal of the tank would be covered by closure costs. Is this correct?
Yes. So as shown in my presentation, Rule 703B2 sets out the review standard as the estimated cost necessary to ensure the proper remediation, reclamation, closure, and abandonment of the remediation project site. And so operators don't need to include costs for other work at the site as described above, like the removal of waste from a tank and closing out the site. They don't need to provide that.
Thank you, Greg. The next question is, for the financial assurance cost in the Form 27 initial, does this cost only represent the remediation, or does it include the wellhead cut/cap or flow line removal, et cetera, that is associated with the Form 27? And there's part two of that question as well.
Yeah, so that's the same as above. That cut and cap work, the flow line removal work is not necessarily the remediation, so that's not included there. We're looking for the cost to clean up contaminated soil and groundwater.
Thank you, Greg. And part two from that is, in the Form 27 sub, if no issues are found in the samples and remediation is deemed complete, is it acceptable for this number to be 0?
Yeah, if the Form 27 is submitted as a request for closure, then yes, you're done with the project. However, the financial assurance is also required to include costs for, to cover reclamation. So, if you have outstanding reclamation to be completed, then, you could specify that, additional reclamation work remains, and, an additional $12,000 will be spent on reclamation.
Great, thank you, Greg. Jane, I think this one's for you. Do we feel confident that the Form 6A will be out before the last few days of June?
Yes.
Thank you, Jane. And Greg, this one's for you. On the Form 27 supplemental, it does not let an operator enter the monetary value of remaining cost for the remediation. Is this a glitch in the form? This is under the remediation project progress update tab.
Yeah, I believe that is a glitch in the form, and we are working to resolve that.
Thank you, Greg. And the next question is, how would we handle a Form 3 if there is a Form 9 in progress? Thanks.
There are always going to be Form 9s in progress. So the Form 3 is very automated. When you create the form, it will reflect the current wells and facilities, and it's not going to see a pending Form 9. So the rules require a revised Form 3 for a transfer of operatorship. But of course, you can't revise your Form 3 until you have a form, a plan in place. So you're just going to have to essentially, for an initial plan, which is what everyone's preparing for, just ignore a pending Form 9. So anything listed for a pending transfer is still going to show up in the seller's initial Form 3 and will not be recognized by the buyer's Form 3. And we'll just have to be cleaning things up as we go along.
Thank you, Jane. And I guess this is in response to what you said. I'm not really sure. This person says, I don't think that is workable, especially if Form 9 is delayed over 45 days. I think that's related.
I understand it's going to be messy, but it is what it is. The Form 3s are going to pull data right out of the database, and until a transfer is approved, it isn't recognized.
Give me just a moment. It's really hard to find the Zoom stuff sometimes.
So I have a couple other comments on the Form 3s and the associated hearing applications. Again, please don't file a hearing application for your financial assurance plan until the Form 3 is ready. The hearing application requires the document number from the web form system for your Form 3. Please just wait. And another point for the hearing applications, look at the rules. The 702 rules specify that a hearing application is required for certain options of financial assurance plans. So an option 1 or an option 2 does not require a hearing application. An option 3 or 4 that does not seek to modify the time frame for making the annual contributions for the financial assurance amount. If you use the time frames of 5 years and 10 years that are, or no, actually it's 10 and 20 years that are within the rules, those financial assurance plans do not require a hearing application. If you're seeking to modify that, then yes, a hearing application is required. And a hearing application is required for an option 5 plan and for an option 6 plan. So read the rules carefully. It's all spelled out in there. So sorry, just those comments.
Thank you, Jane. And I think, Scott, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. I just want to augment what Jane said regarding the transfer process. I know Jarrett's had a number of conversations with different operators. We are, And two things, right? So the Form 3 is the plan, but there's no dollars being submitted with the Form 3. It's just the plan. The Form 3A is the form that you'll submit when you go to actually submit your instruments that are demonstrating financial assurance. Before any Form 3A is required, if there's a Form 9 in process, Jarrett's team will get that cleaned up, right? So that you're not having to file financial assurance and then have it be rescinded because we process a Form 9 and now you have a different amount of financial assurance due. When Jarrett's team goes to process the Form 3A, if there's a Form 9 in process, they will finish that before they, require a Form 3A to be filed. And so yes, there will be some time constraints in there, but we recognize that we have to finish the transfer process before we can have an accurate picture of the final financial assurance amounts due. And so the way that works is you file your Form 3 initial plan with whatever facilities are in COGCC in our database of record. You file the Form 9s, we'll process the Form 9s, then you can file a revised Form 3, and then Form 3A once that revised Form 3 is processed. So that won't affect a lot of operators. We've been watching this very carefully, and Jarrett's team has worked diligently to remove the backlog on the Form 9 process, and they're processing those in more or less real time, near real time. So I just wanted to add that in terms of the Form 9 transfer, and I apologize, I've got to run to another meeting again.
Thanks, Scott. And then Mimi put in the financial assurance hearings application template will be posted on the hearings page. The template will be under the e-filings tab. The link to the hearing page is in the chat, and I just clicked on that so we could all see here. Let's see, it'll be under the e-filings tab. So here, e-filing. So here, that's it. The next question is, well, sorry, I think I'm a few questions down here. Here we go. Any update on when operators can expect to see the Form 9 updates or guidance to include the new required information?
Well, the revised Form 9 is currently being tested. I hope that we can release it in a week or two. And yes, there'll be some guidance and instructions, whether it's written or just in a form of a presentation like this. I think Jarrett will be able to do that.
Great, thank you, Jane. That's it for the questions for now. So we'll see if any others come in while we're wrapping up here. Here are the rest of the dates. Just a reminder that we have weekly meetings scheduled through, I think August 2nd is the last not usual one. And then the usual ones are down there. They're usually the second Tuesday of the month. And then if you need to be added to the operator email list, please email me at this email address here, and I will put you on the operator email list. Sometimes it takes me a few weeks to get to those, but now that weekly meetings are a thing, I'm trying to get those done in the same week so that you could get the next one out. So just let me know if you're not receiving those. Another question has come in the meanwhile. With the delay in the Form 3 pushback due to, with the delay in the Form 3 pushback the due date for financial assurance operators?
That is something that the commission is going to address tomorrow. So tune in to the hearing.
Thanks, Jane. And all that hearing information can be found on our homepage. If you don't already have it bookmarked, you can just Google COGCC. It's usually the first thing that comes up. And tomorrow morning, it'll be at the top left of the page. Right now, it's a little further down because there's some Tuesday items in there. And we'll give a few more moments for another question to come in. All right, well, if one comes in while I'm wrapping up, we'll just shoot to that. But if not, then we'll just go ahead and wrap up for today. Thank you so much for attending our operator meeting. And I hope everybody has a great day. Bye.
Thanks, Hannah.